Okay.
Welcome, everybody, to the Mind, Body, and Soul television show coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado TV studios. I'm your host, Coach Steve Toth, and also the founder of ConsciousEvolutionMedia.com. 10 plus years going and 15,000 plus shows. I stopped counting. So we have a wonderful guest with us this evening, very intriguing, interesting guest. His name is Robert Kosmar. He is an author as well as an astrologer, and he's joining us from Florida. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you inviting me to the show.
Absolutely, you're very welcome. And the theme of the show for this evening is how to hear with your heart. And people might be freaking out by now. What do you mean by hearing with your heart? But before we get into the theme, Robert, if I took away all those titles, author, astrologer, writer, and all the other things anybody has ever called you in your life, if I take them all away, what's left? Who is really Robert Kosmar?
From my experience within myself, I feel myself as a conscious being that stretches out into eternity, that embraces all existence, and that is capable of expanding itself to understanding whatever it is that my soul chooses me to know, to learn, and to experience.
Awesome. Wow. Did you practice that?
No, those are things that I've learned over time through the process that is on my website called awareness.
Oh, okay, great.
In other words, for me, once a person has gone through the process of all the belief systems that we go through, the ones that are programmed into us as children and the ones that we adopt as adults, and through all the things that we experience on this journey to achieve what I guess the world calls success, some people, I feel, are meant to have experiences in their life that take them off of what you would call, I guess, this worldly sense of who we are, and that puts us on a particular path of individual self-discovery and self-awakening or awareness. And at that point, which is usually brought about by some form of crisis in our lives, we either go with the flow and become aware of our own freedom within inside of ourselves, or in some cases, folks will choose self-destructive behavior because they are unable to understand why they've come to a very what might perceive to be an empty or a lonely place, but actually is a place that is filled with the rest of us that we just haven't become awakened to.
Okay, so Robert, what I'm hearing there is that a lot of us are still in the matrix, and we're just living our lives. I thought that movie really very elegantly showed how we operate as human beings. So, you know, I kind of gave that a name, and the name I gave it is that a lot of human beings are on training wheels, and they're just going through the motion. And how I know it, because I used to be one of those. And then you said it very, very accurately that some major thing happens, and sometimes how the major thing happens, I call it the universal 2x4. It's either we are forced to wake up, or we are given the choice to wake up if we wish, or there's a choice not to.
Right.
And I noticed that, and Robert, I noticed that every time I chose not to, the next 2x4 was bigger and harder.
Yes. There is, in astrology, for example, there are cycles that are kind of referenced by the cycles, the phases of the moon. And in some cases, particularly with the planet Saturn, if we don't learn the lessons under trines of Saturn to certain planets, when it comes to opposition and squares, then we learn the hard way. And the thing that we have to learn in all these things is to trust our feelings. If there is one weakness that we all have, it's that our minds are overdeveloped and our hearts are underdeveloped because we don't know how to feel. And I think that that's pretty much been the message through at least several thousand years by Buddha in the East.
Yeah, nothing has changed, Robert. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to matter that we have all these teachers. It doesn't seem to matter that I've been putting out this message to humanity for over 10 years. Things keep going on just the way they have always been, and then the people that are ready, and I mean none of this stuff is happening in terms of awareness and awakening on my clock. That's something I had to learn on my own. I had expectations at the beginning when I started this, and I no longer have expectations because the only expectations I have is to myself. Right. So everything else happens perfectly, just exactly when it's supposed to. And but I do wanna help you, not help you, but help me and the viewers to clarify a little bit more about awareness, because a lot of people are confused about what the heck is awareness. What are we aware of, and what are we talking about?
Well, to put it in terms that most people can understand that are on some kind of a spiritual path, whenever the mind is not actively engaged, whenever we choose not to have a attachment to our thinking, we essentially enter into a state where we become aware of how we feel, or we can become aware of how we feel. If, in, for example, a state of meditation, if you are able to silence the mind long enough to allow your feelings to guide you, you'll find that there's a natural intelligence that you have that is quite willing to guide you if you trust it, if you listen to it. And this is an element in our consciousness. I see that we essentially are beings that are distracted in life by our thoughts and our thinking and our emotions. And when we can learn to silence them and to allow our feelings to teach us who we are, then we enter into that realm of beingness where we realize that we are eternal in the sense of our conscious understanding of things, and that consciousness grows as we become more inwardly directed, more trusting, more aware of what is happening to us, because our lives are simply a mirror of who we are. If we are having turmoil in our outer life, then we're also having turmoil on our inner life. And if we don't address that, then we continue to create the turmoil that is coming back at us.
Mm-hmm. So Robert, would I be accurate if I said that awareness also has to do something with the fact that I'm able to witness myself, meaning that there is, I'll use a different word, there's like this real me, the authentic me, and then there's this other me, and the other me is, what word I want to use? Maybe the other me is the operating system that's running me. Would that be accurate? Would that be accurate?
I would say that's very accurate. I would use another frame of reference, okay? Because we have an ego, because there is a desire within us, okay, that works in harmony with the mind and our emotions, we're distracted from the purity of our conscious beingness. That conscious beingness is only limited by that ego and that mind. And this explains why all of these teachers that have talked about these experiences of enlightenment and stuff express this sense of expanded awe, and bliss is often used in their communication. When this happens to you, you enter into a state of unexplainable peace. That's the only word that I can use to identify that, and I use that because I had an experience in '72 that didn't realize for a number of years what had happened in terms of that particular experience. But it taught me, going back to what you were saying earlier, Steve, you use the term witness. And that's very important in a person's healing, because you learn to witness your mind and your emotions, and you learn to identify in that witnessing that you are a conscious being that is separate of that, of the mind and the emotions, if you choose to enter into that awareness. And that's just kind of a peek in a door of something that we are that goes beyond the definition of mind and emotion. And it's very difficult, and this is why it's hard for people to explain spiritual things. It's almost impossible to explain any other way than through allegory or poetry or things of that nature, or art, to explain what it feels like to be in a state of heightened awareness, because you lose the framework that the mind creates with the ego, and you become that which is just pure creative energy, or spiritual being, or however you want to identify, that particular experience. It's almost impossible to put into words.
Well, because there are no words.
That's correct. Exactly.
Matter of fact, I'm having more and more challenges explaining my own experiences, because the English vocabulary, and I speak several languages, but it doesn't matter. None of the languages I speak have words for the experiences I'm having, so it makes no difference.
the thing in my writing, and over the last 3 to 5 years, I've been writing almost constantly about awareness. The thing that keeps coming through is that we have a part of us that knows everything that we need to know about ourselves and existence, but establishing a relationship with that is not that simple. Most of the time we get glimpses. Most of the time, things will come and go and become a memory. But the actual experience of what people would call eternity or bliss or whatever is something that happens very infrequently in a person's lifetime, unless, in my view, unless they've chosen in that particular lifetime to go through something that shakes them at such a deep level that they're able to let go of their complete dependence on their mind and their emotions and their ego. Mm. And it is a form of death in a way.
Yeah, it's almost like the way I'm experiencing it, Robert, is that people are afraid and scared that if they no longer identifying who they are based on their ego and based on what they know, they don't know how to be with that.
No, and the ego, again, to try to understand the ego, it's the desire to be separate from the whole. Mm-hmm. It's almost an anti-energy, but it just hungers to be able to be in control.
And wants to be in charge. Yeah, wants to be in charge. Wants to run the bus, as I have said it a million times. In fact, it wants the key. It wants the wheel. It wants the whole thing.
It does.
And basically, it promises you or me that I will take care of you. Don't worry. Don't worry, Steve. I'm here to protect you. I will make sure that moment to moment you will survive.
It actually, in a way, Steve, turns what's true inside out into a lie. That sound pretty good?
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah.
It takes the idea, it takes the concept, the idea of love, and it turns it into something that, in terms of the way that most people try to understand it in their minds, is something that's very manipulative, controlling, very flesh-based, non-pure in the sense of accepting and embracing and giving at all. And that explains in a lot of ways why the behavior that we see in society is the way that it is.
Yeah. So what I use to identify who or what I'm dealing with is that if they come from confusion, manipulation, fear, and force, I don't want to be around that.
Right. Right. Well, again, the ego is very good at getting into power struggles, and whenever it's threatened, it automatically creates an identity crisis that, again, can release a tremendous amount of fear, because until a person becomes aware in their feelings that they're more than just their mind and their emotions, they're lost in a sense. They're like a child trying to grab a hold of a parent that's the child's falling back and they don't want to fall down, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And until that experience happens, we're not quite sure exactly what is on the other side of that fear.
Yeah, right on. So I wanted to have a little dialogue with you about feelings, because you mentioned it a number of times, and feelings. My experiences of feelings is that women are much better at it than men, and we have a lot to learn from from women about feeling. And it's interesting when you watch couples, and when you watch the interaction between couples, the guys just want to do stuff, and the women just want to feel stuff.
Yeah.
It's like somebody that created us, had this joke that I'm going to put these two together and I'm going to make them so incompatible that they're going to be driving each other crazy for the rest of their lives.
Well, the war of relationships is kind of a battle over intimacy. And oddly enough, if you can't have intimacy in a relationship, it's not going to grow. And if you don't develop some kind of intimacy with life, you're not going to grow in terms of healing that sense of isolation that we all feel at certain times, because we're too dependent on our minds and our egos for an identity that really isn't real at all. It's something that's created as a habit in this world, but it's not really who we are.
So let's see if we could maybe assist some of the male species that are viewing this show, or going to be viewing this show, in terms of I know, because I am a male and I feel, and I always have felt stuff. It's just when I was not awake, I wasn't really paying attention to what my feelings and my intuition were telling me. Actually, many times I did the opposite of them. And I know better now. But there are all these men out there that do have feelings. They just hide it. They don't want to admit that they're having it, because it's not I guess it's not a manly thing.
Right.
In our society, it's been decided by somebody, and then the group consciousness took over that feeling and crying and those things are not manly.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm actually, Robert, I'm more touched, moved, and inspired by the man actually willing to be opening up themselves and trusting and crying in front of me than I am with a woman, because I know for women that's fairly easy.
Right. I think that Steve, that people get confused about emotions and feelings. And a lot of times when I'm dealing with clients or I'm talking to somebody about awareness, they'll ask me about this feeling thing, and I'll say to them that your feelings and your emotions are totally different. Your feelings are the essential, pure, natural energy of your being, whereas your emotions are kind of a conflict between the mind and the ego that have fear and frustration at their basis. When you and I are in the flow, we don't really have to think. We can feel our way through something. And life very much is meant for us to be receivers of, I guess you might call it divine consciousness or awareness or enlightenment or whatever, so that we can create in harmony with existence. And what the ego and the mind have done is the ego primarily has robbed that basic impulse, so that the mind and its preoccupation with trying to prove everything would take over and create in the hope that it would find the answer. And in my own awareness, I know that that's not going to be what's going to happen in the long run. That eventually it'll get to the point somewhere, maybe 1,000, 1,000,000 years in the future and stuff, where the realization will be that that'll all collapse back to that state of divinity within us, in our feelings.
Or it could happen tomorrow. Who knows?
It could. Yeah, it could.
So I could actually, because I'm feeling who I am in front of. So I could actually do this show without talking to you. I could just look into your eyes, and I'm sure you could do the same. And I could have this conversation with you. That wouldn't be very entertaining or useful to the general public, because they wouldn't have no clue what the heck are we talking about.
We may not even talk, Steve. We just may smile and laugh at each other.
Yeah, exactly. I could do this with you without the conversation. But what's interesting is that, and what came up for me right now is my spirit. So what I wanted to add to the conversation that you were having about feelings and emotions is that the feelings that we are having, would that be the way our highest self is telling us what's the best and highest interest of us?
It could be that, or it could just be that we're connecting on a spiritual, soul conscious level that shows the unity of everything. That in our hearts we're all essentially the same being. I would go as far as saying that. Because the identities that we have in this world don't exist beyond just our minds and our egos. That part of things, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, because for me it's just been a very, very distant feeling. But it is an understanding that beyond our mind and ego, who we are is quite different, but it is unified. We all essentially feel the same thing.
What I'm getting at, Robert, is that this is much simpler than what we have made it. We have way overcomplicated this thing.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like let's talk about love. So what is love? I mean, let's get connected to the energy of love. What is that? Because a lot of people, I feel, have no clue what love is. I mean, people connect love with intimacy and sex.
Well, basically, for someone who's driven by their ego, it's very much lust, period. If you're talking about the universal kind of love, it's the recognition of absolute harmony, complete basic bliss or peace, and a sense of all-pervasive beingness. And it kind of borders on a line of something that's very difficult for people to accept. In fact, for myself, it's basically something that the mind part of me has a hard time embracing. But it has to do with the idea that we are essentially God as created beings experiencing life for the purpose of enriching, expanding, learning, growing, but that's not something that I think that me or you or anybody in this world probably is capable of being aware of or experiencing. But it doesn't make sense any other way. For us to be whole, to be one, to be unified, that means there's no difference between what we call God and existence. They have to be the same. But the perception of who we are is different because, for whatever reason, maybe on a very high level, we decided to have this experience called Earth, with all the things that we had to experience and learn here, for the purpose of enriching, expanding the potential that we have on another level.
Well, so how much do you feel your ego is involved in this conversation?
In what now? Say it one more time.
Yes, that was the right response.
I think that, to answer your question, I think it's probably a mixture.
Uh-huh.
because I can say that what I'm feeling, okay, in response to you, it's kind of like we're dancing with feelings, and we're trying to communicate those feelings back and forth. And some of the things are not we're not capable of expressing in terms of words, and your experience may be different than mine in some ways. So there could be a difference there, even of opinion, which is natural. I've never met anybody that exactly had the same experiences that I have had in my life. And I believe that there is an ultimate truth. There's also an individual truth somewhere along the way to that.
Oh, there's that word. I love that word, truth. Let's talk about truth. So when we're talking about truth, what are we talking about? Whose truth? Are we talking about universal truth, or are we talking about people's truth, or what are we talking about? Because a lot of people have come and gone that were teachers, gurus, whatever, and thousands of people ended up following them because they, quote unquote, had the truth.
I believe, as in most cases with any kind of spiritual experience, that you have to discover what is true for you. That's probably step number one. Until you can discover that, you're not going to be able to have any inkling whatsoever of what universal truth is. But I do feel that we all have a different story, a different book with different chapters down here. Obviously, not everybody experiences things the same way, the same time in their life, but there is an overriding sense that evolution spiritually is a necessity, and also the correct way that life unfolds.
Wait a minute. So I come to this realization just through my own experience, because it's well known that I used to be a personal development junkie for decades. But it has come to my attention, Robert, that what I'm really interested in nowadays is, obviously to continue to learn, continue to be open. I'm feeling that that being open to all possibility is the foundation of consciousness. Now these are some big words, but I'm also finding that when I am engaging with people that are not open, it feels good to me. It doesn't even feel that I even want to go 2 seconds with them in this journey. And it's not a judgment. It's just.
I think you have
just,
to. I think, Steve, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. So what I was getting at is that my life is getting simpler and simpler. Actually, is what I'm experiencing, and how it's getting simpler is that all I have to do nowadays is really just pay attention to whatever it is that I'm about to say or I'm about to do that is in the best interest of myself and everybody else concerned. Right. If it is, because it seems like when I ask that question, my ego automatically stands down. My ego cannot be involved in that conversation.
Going back to the comment you made about your truth there, what you're telling me or what I'm hearing from you is that you've learned to tune into what's true for you.
Yeah. It's exactly. So I'm not telling anybody on this network to follow what I'm doing. No. I'm telling everybody. I'm telling everybody is to follow yourself. There's nothing more important, I think, on this planet, is for everybody to go inside into their own hearts and figure this thing out for themselves. Because I think you say this on your website even, that this is not something that you can have a magic wand, or I can have a magic wand with this network and just go, okay, there it is. You're now awake and aware, and go on your happy way. It doesn't work that way, although we know that religion tries it that way. It doesn't work at all. But we've been doing that for thousands of years. So just because we're doing things for thousands of years, that doesn't make them the accurate thing to do.
Right. One of the things, too, Stephen, that I don't feel that people understand, and it's hard to grasp, is the impact of imagination on and people's beliefs, and how imagination can create situations that are truly, in a sense, not spiritual. They're just a diversion into a certain aspect of the mind that doesn't lead them deeply into their own knowing. You mentioned earlier here a little bit about this concept of, of your own going within and trusting your feelings and listening. For a person to truly discover themselves, their true self, they have to be able to feel the language of silence within their feelings. And what I mean by that is that this goes back to the concept I mentioned earlier about the knower that we all have. When we get to a place to where we are not relying on any outer beliefs, any effects of the imagination as to our identity, and we're truly being authentic, then our feelings become more of a direction, of a guidance, of a force within us that is able to flow with life, no matter how it seems to be going to our minds. And you mentioned this earlier about the fact of just trusting whatever occurs. Yeah. And you really do. You really have to get to the point where you just go with life and let it reveal itself to you and learn whatever you're supposed to learn and trust that the outcome is what it's supposed to be. Yeah, absolutely. I actually feel that, I kind of locked myself up for a decade. Yeah. You can consider myself, or you can consider me as like, I did go through that experience of becoming a monk in a way, because I disconnected from life, in terms of everyday life. I let go of all my friends, all the people that I used to hang out with, except my kids, and I pretty much locked myself into a studio to start this network, and I continued that way. That doesn't mean that I wasn't interacting with people, but I was interacting with people on the internet. You see, right? For me, it was kind of a protection, not only just a protection, but also a way of going through, as far as I was concerned, a course correction in my life, because I almost ended up dead. Right. That was my wake-up call. Yeah. And I said, well, if I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning, I don't want to wake up the way I used to be. Right. And it's in my control. So guess what? I'm going to choose not to wake up that way, because that's the only way I'm willing to proceed. And this is what had to happen for me, obviously. But about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I got to a point where I realized that I created this bubble around me. Like, there was this protection from the world. I stopped watching television. I stopped watching all the negativity. If you can imagine, I've gone through like 15,000 or more shows, listening to and being involved in nothing other than these kind of conversations of all time. And in a way, it was kind of a laboratory for me. But then 6 months ago, I realized that, well, that's nice, and I feel that I'm not pretty much healed. But what about the world out there? Why don't I just go out there and see if I can, implement any of these things that I learned in the last 10 years into the mess that's out there, and how will I integrate it? Because I've been kind of protecting myself from the mess. You know what I mean? And this is quite a project that I got myself involved in. But I'm more prepared now than I have ever been. Because back then, 10 years ago, I had no clue. I think that to do what you're doing, to be at the level that you're at, you had to be in alignment with your soul's purpose for your life. That's the strength. The strength that a person has that is such that they are out there in the public in one way, shape, or form is an inner integrity of knowing who they are and of what they're supposed to be doing. When a person is not confident in that and uncertain at the very levels of their innermost being, they become run over by the pressures of having to deal with all the other responsibilities, all the other interactions that go on in life. You have to be very, very clear about who you are within yourself, and that is essentially what awareness is trying to do, is to make you aware of your inner spiritual identity, and then how can you use that awareness to be able to help others learn the same things that you've learned along your way. Because when I was 1971, I reached the point that I think that you were talking about earlier there, to where the pain in me was so great and so strong that the concept of ending life became more bearable than that pain.
Yeah.
And it opened
really
the door.
Like,
yeah, it was very frightening.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a moment in my life that I will never forget.
Yes.
So this is pretty cool. So earlier I wanted to say this, and I'll just come back to it, which is what's interesting to me now that I know that I'm aware now, and I know that I'm conscious because I can witness myself, and I know that I cannot go back. I have proven all these things to me. I know that I can screen out all the stuff that's not in my best interest, and I know that I am no longer interested in addictive behavior, which I used to be. And I'm feeling, and this is just like a test that I'm running on myself, that I am incapable. Being the being that I am today, I am incapable of hurting others. I would be incapable of shooting somebody. I am incapable of doing all the things that all the craziness out there are doing right now in the world. I cannot get myself to do it. There's no way.
And, you know, there's a very thin line between genius and madness. You know, you've probably heard that a lot. And the difference there is whether or not in that heightened state of activity, whether you are in touch with your heart, your existence, or whether or not you ignite something in your unconscious. Because the unconscious, there is our unconscious mind, and then there's an unconscious energy that's been here for billions of years that has a lot of the energy that's been trapped there by the thought processes of civilizations, misconceptions about reality and stuff, and we're capable of tapping into that when we're not consciously aware, and that's what often drives people to do things that are very destructive, because they aren't able to hang on long enough until the other part of them, the good part, wakes up and they get trapped in that dark element and do something foolish.
Yeah, you are absolutely right on. I mean, I even said this before, that when people don't have the opportunity to be conscious or awake, they're capable of doing anything, and there's no need to explain why. There is no why.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just what it is. It's just how it is.
The thing about the ego and the mind, Steve, in my experience, is that because it's very selfish, when it can't have its way, it would rather destroy you than to let you become aware. It would rather that you went insane than that you become aware, that you heal yourself.
Because it feels that it's the death of itself. Right? Well, I made a deal with my ego, and I basically said, you're never going to go away. You have a job, and your job is to protect me from danger. That's your job. But your job is not... so, first of all, give me the keys. We're switching chairs. I'm driving. You just sit there and let me know when I'm in danger. And
I think that the biggest and the hardest test goes back to what you said at the very beginning of our conversation. It has to do with the ability to watch the ego. For me, my growth is centered around this watching of my reactions to the things that happen to me day in and day out. Do I handle them with love? Do I handle them with wisdom? Do I handle them with compassion and understanding? Or do my emotions come flying out. And am I defensive? And am I angry? Am I bitter? You know, if I give into those things, then I haven't learned the lesson of being a watcher. If I can experience those things, which is what's going to happen for anybody in the physical body anyhow, then I can learn where I'm still not whole, I'm still in pain, I still need to grow in my awareness, and that's why, I guess in a way of saying it, that's why I'm still here to learn those things.
Right. So just want to remind everybody that our theme is how to hear with your heart. Now, I feel that we have answered that question probably 2-3 dozen times on the show. But just in case, if somebody feels that we didn't, how would you directly answer that question? How to hear with your heart?
I think if you're talking about your own life, you have to begin to look at it very realistically. And I'm not just talking about, you know, your attitudes and your beliefs, but more so your feelings. You know, if you're a person that's, you know, experiencing constant pain and misery and stuff, the ego is going to say, you know, escape, escape, escape. You know, whether it would be drugs, alcohol, or some addictive behavior, because it's afraid of facing that part of ourselves which is whole, because it realizes it can't be in control for us to be able to be whole and to be healed. But that's where you start. You have to start with an honest appraisal of where you're at in life. You have to look at all the things that are happening around you, and just the mere fact that a person is willing to recognize that their life is not as happy and as full and as whole as they would like to be can create an opportunity for a person to become aware of what to do, where to begin. It's difficult to give anybody directions about anything. You really can't tell a person what to do. You can help them to understand to some degree what they're going through. But really it boils down to recognizing if you're wrong in terms of the way you're living your life, and being open to the fact that there's a part of you that understands and is capable of guiding you through the maze of doubt and uncertainty.
Well, you see, yeah, that's right on, Robert. What I'm hoping for is that people watching this network and the different shows that we do, that they will have these aha moments, and they will be somehow touched, moved, and inspired. And I'm not attached how often does that happen or when it happens, but I'm just hoping that, because if I look at my own life, I had to go through certain things to get to where I'm at, and I had to experience incredible amount of pain. But I am not so sure anymore that that's an absolute requirement. I'm feeling that, and I'm speaking to a lot of the younger generation and the younger people. A lot of people are, you know, in their 20s and 30s. They are open and they get this. Like, you know, I had somebody on the network the other day that was just 28, and oh my God, if I was where she was at 28, I was like in absolute darkness when I was 28.
I don't think that kids nowadays are as, I guess the word I want to use, they're not as trapped in the illusions of society maybe as what I was when I was that age. You know, so kind of overwhelmed by the establishment and all of the things that meant back in the 60s and the 50s. I've found over the years that they generally know how to get along better. The male and the female components are much more honest. You know, that word honesty is a real big thing, whether it's being honest with yourself or honest with other people. A tremendous amount of healing is realized when we are willing to be open and honest about ourselves and our feelings, first to ourselves and then to other people, because that word intimacy, again, is what we're looking for, is an intimacy with existence, an intimacy in some people's minds with God, just an intimacy of feeling whole. And that is the nature of existence. But as long as we're trying to find a healing or a sense of truth through our thinking processes, it's not going to happen. Because truth is an experience in consciousness that is knowing what things, the way things are. Whereas the mind is always looking for labels to try to say this is that and that's this and all this stuff.
And this means this, no and that means that we're like a meaning-making machines.
Mm-hmm. we're like a dog chasing its tail.
All right then. So, well, this was a really intriguing dialogue that we were having here, Robert. So I didn't expect anything. I never do. It turns out just the way it's supposed to. So I'm curious as to what do you feel, where are we in terms of the evolution of humanity, and where are we heading? Because when I look out there in the current reality, it doesn't look very pretty.
Mm-hmm. I think that we have to become more consciously aware of who we are and how existence is, how it functions on a level of silent knowing. Because I think for most of us that are aware, we realize the systems that are, it would be horrible for them to collapse all at once. And a lot of people speculate whether they could or they would. To be honest, I don't know. It may take another 1,000,000 years for us to get to a point where humanity is enlightened in the way that we would envision that to possibly be. I think that everybody who is aware and awake, you have to kind of focus on your own growth and your awareness and what you come to contribute to life in a particular lifetime, and let that, quote, healing of humanity take care of itself whenever it happens, because we can't make it happen. It'll happen when it's going to happen.
Well said. So, Robert, we're coming to the end of the Conscious Hour. I don't know if I mentioned to you that this experience is a Conscious Hour, which means it does not generally feel like an hour. It feels much smaller. I usually experiencing these 1 hour dialogues as 5 minutes, as far as I can tell. I don't know what your experience has been, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk about maybe some of your books or your website, or direct people where you would like them to go to learn more about you.
Okay. Well, I have 4 books. One of them is called The Trilogy of Awareness, and it's 3 allegories about awakening. And it's like, in a way, an allegory kind of like Star Wars, kind of like the old Twilight Zone.
The Matrix. It's a trilogy.
Yeah. They're stories, though, that are directed towards the heart, directed towards helping a person who is searching to come to some kind of a realization that their suffering, their feeling of lost alienation is something that we all share, and that there are answers, that we carry within inside of ourselves. The last book I had published, and there's 2 of these, one of them hasn't come out yet, it's called The Big Little Book of Whispers. And it has about 2,000 insights that are more like a meditative type guide, but they are things that over the last 5 years I have been, I guess, led to write down. They just come to me, and I write them down. And I feel them first as I'm writing them, and then I kind of transcribe those feelings into words that are almost like a version of poetry that's not poetic in the sense of rhyming verse, 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 but it's like a thought or a feeling that says something very profound in just that little paragraph. So it's very digestible. Another small book is called Awareness Being Fully Alive, explains the importance of awareness. And the magic of love and intimacy has to do primarily with growth in awareness in relationships, and how to keep, so to speak, the fire burning by developing an intimacy based on trust and communication. My website on the internet, essentially it's a blog. It's called Knowing Whispers, and there's also another one called Knowing Whispers Astrology. As an astrologer, I do astrology for relationships, relocation, electional astrology, and basically anything in the field of astrology the person needs to get a sense of their bearings and what's going on in their life.
Awesome. Well, Robert, you were absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed this brief conscious hour with you, and we're also practicing, if the viewers are not noticing this per se, but we have been practicing being really connected to each other, and you know, I was experiencing completely quieting down my head, so I didn't have any chatter going on, and I was able to connect with Robert time to time where I was actually hearing things he wasn't really saying. He was thinking it, he was feeling it, but he wasn't saying it. But because I was like really listening and I was over there, not over here, I was able to get some of that stuff, which was
maybe
really intriguing.
Maybe if you invite me back in the future, Steve, you and I will be able to have a pure feeling exchange that those who are watching this program will be able to feel. I think that's what you're trying to say, what you're hoping for, is to generate that much energy that it reaches out and touches people in their hearts and isn't just touching their minds.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, I'm definitely up for whatever experiences that we can generate that will help whoever wants to tune into this frequency. I mean, I think we vibrate at a pretty high frequency. I don't know what they are. I just know that I can notice when the frequency is low. I'll get the heck out of there. And I think we usually on this network, our frequency are pretty high. But I know there's always room for improvement. We could go higher, and who knows what's possible.
Yeah, you never know.
I'm
open.
Never know.
I am too. And again, I want to thank you for inviting me on your show. It's been a pleasure. And like I said, again, I look forward to exchanging energy with you again sometime down the road.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. Have a fantastic evening.
You too, Steve.
And for everybody else, if you were touched, moved, and inspired by anything that Robert or I said or did, please continue to come back and go to consciousevolutionmedia.com and support our show on YouTube. The more you watch, the more it gets up to the top 30 every month, and top 10 actually. And if it gets to the top 10, it could go to public television. Thank you so much. See you guys tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.